My name is Paige Tanner. I'm 34, and 6 weeks after giving birth to my daughter Nora, I was lying flat on a hospital gurney with a broken collarbone, two cracked ribs, and a phone pressed to my ear, begging my own mother to go pick up my newborn from my neighbor's house. The accident happened on a Tuesday morning. I'd left Nora with my neighbor Diane for a quick errand. Formula, a few groceries, 20 minutes round trip. A driver ran a red light on Clearwater Avenue and hit my door so hard I blacked out before the airbag fully deployed. I came to with paramedics leaning over me, someone asking who to call. I gave them my mother's number without hesitation. That's what you do. You assume they'll come. I was still in triage when she finally picked up. I told her everything as calmly as I could, that I was at St. Augustine Medical, that I was being admitted, that Nora was with Diane on Fern Court and needed to be picked up within the hour. My mother went quiet. Then she said she needed to talk to my father. I sat there in a hospital gown, holding the phone with a shaking hand, listening to muffled voices on the other end. When she came back, her tone had already changed. They had plans, a dinner reservation they'd been looking forward to for weeks. She told me to call a babysitting service. I asked her to repeat herself. She did. I reminded her Nora was 6 weeks old, not a toddler who could wait in a stranger's house, but a newborn who needed to be held, fed on schedule, kept warm by someone who knew what they were doing. I told my mother I was in the emergency room with broken bones and I needed her, and she said the words I will never forget. Your sister never has these emergencies. My sister Bree was on a 10-day Caribbean cruise she'd booked 3 months earlier, and somehow that was the comparison my mother reached for. Bree was floating somewhere off the Gulf Coast. I was strapped to a hospital bed in a chest brace, and my 6-week-old daughter was sitting in a neighbor's living room waiting for someone to come, and my parents were talking about a dinner reservation. I hung up. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stared at the ceiling of the triage bay, listening to the monitors beep, carts roll past, someone cough behind a curtain down the hall. Then I opened my phone and got to work. I found a vetted emergency childcare agency through a quick search, right there from the hospital bed. I explained the situation, gave them Diane's address, authorized payment over the phone, and within 40 minutes, a certified caregiver was at Diane's door. I coordinated the car seat transfer, sent Nora's feeding schedule by text, and made sure Diane had my room number, handling every piece of it alone, between x-rays. While I waited to be moved upstairs, something shifted in me. Not grief exactly, something colder, more focused. I opened my banking app and looked at the automatic transfer I'd set up years earlier. $4,500 every month for 9 years straight. I'd started it when my father lost his job and they nearly lost the house. I never complained, never asked for anything back, never let them feel it was a burden. Over 9 years, that came to $486,000, nearly $500,000 sent to people who had just told me to call a babysitter. I canceled the transfer right there. No call, no explanation. I set the phone down on the bedside table. I was moved to a room on the 3rd floor around 7 that evening. The caregiver sent a photo of Nora asleep in her car seat, small and peaceful in a clean onesie. It made my chest ache in a way that had nothing to do with the ribs. I thanked her and said I'd check in again within the hour. Around 8:30, I heard footsteps in the hallway, slow, deliberate, the kind that belonged to someone older. The door opened, and my grandfather stepped in. He stood there a moment, taking in the brace, the IV, the hospital gown, his expression unreadable. Here's the continuation, rewritten the same way, trimmed a filler, kept close to the same length and structure. Not pity, something more serious than pity. He pulled a chair close to my bed, sat down, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, I heard what happened. All of it. I didn't ask how. My grandfather, Gerald Tanner, was 79 and sharp as a blade. He always had a way of knowing things before anyone told him. He reached over and put his hand over mine, the one without the IV line, and just held it for a moment without speaking. That silence meant more to me than anything my parents had offered all day. Then he said, "Your mother called me to complain that you hung up on her." I almost laughed. I told him everything: the accident, the phone call, what she'd said about Bree's cruise, the dinner reservation, hiring the caregiver from the hospital bed, canceling the transfer. He listened without interrupting once, which is more than I can say for most of my family. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You've been carrying this family for a long time, Paige. Too long." Something cracked open in my chest when he said that. Not the ribs, something else. Something I'd kept sealed shut for years. I'd never once said out loud that I was tired of it, that the monthly transfers had stopped feeling like generosity and started feeling like obligation, that I'd been quietly afraid for years that if I ever needed something back, there'd be nothing there. Now I had proof. He stayed almost 2 hours. He helped me call the caregiver to check on Nora again, sat with me while I ate a hospital dinner I could barely taste. When he left, he squeezed my hand and said he was proud of me, simply, without ceremony, the way he said everything. I held on to those words all night. My parents showed up the next morning, and I could tell right away my mother had come to manage the situation, not apologize for it. Chin up, mouth set in a tight line. My father hung back by the door, hands in his pockets, the way he always did when he knew she'd be speaking for both of them. She led with the dinner, explained it was their anniversary, not just any reservation, that I could have called someone else. She said she understood I was upset, but needed to see her side too. She never asked how I was feeling. She never asked about Nora. She never said sorry. I let her finish. Then I told her, calmly, that the transfer was canceled permanently, not paused, not reduced. I reminded her I'd sent $4,500 a month for 9 years, $486,000 in total, without complaint, because I believed family showed up for each other. And the night before, lying in a hospital bed with broken bones and a 6-week-old who needed someone, she'd shown me exactly where I stood. I told her I'd adjusted accordingly. Her face moved through several expressions fast: shock, then something harder. She said I was being dramatic. She said one dinner didn't erase 9 years. She said she was my mother and I was punishing her. I told her I wasn't punishing anyone. I was making a decision about my own money based on information I now had. Nothing emotional about it, just a decision. My father finally spoke from the doorway, said maybe we all needed to calm down. I told him, as evenly as I could, that I was completely calm. He had nothing to say to that. They left 20 minutes later. My mother didn't hug me on her way out. I noticed. I filed it away. I let it go. I was discharged 2 days later. My grandfather picked me up himself, drove me to Diane's to collect Nora, and helped me carry everything up to my apartment. He put the kettle on while I sat on the couch with Nora on my chest. Both of us finally home. Both of us finally still. Nobody tells you that when family fails you, it also clarifies things. It strips away the noise, the pretending, the decades of excused behavior, and leaves you with something clean and honest. I knew exactly who had shown up. I knew exactly who hadn't. And holding my daughter in that quiet apartment, I knew I was going to be fine. Not because my parents came through, but because even when they didn't, I still could.